Okay. Mind the male-female pleasure gap. Today, I'm going to be presenting on a study, on one of the most recent and comprehensive studies conducted on female orgasm, a study with groundbreaking implications for the determinants and predictors of female orgasm. Previous studies have consistently shown that men experience a much higher frequency of orgasm rates during sexual intercourse than women. More than 90% of men tend to experience orgasm during sexual intercourse, whereas less than 50% of women tend to experience orgasm. The study that I'm about to present directly engages with this frustrating orgasm gap through studying the determinants and predictors of female orgasm. This study was published in June of 2016 in the Socio-Affective Neuroscience and Psychology Journal. It aimed to find mental determinants of female orgasm, physical predictors of female orgasm, as well as long-term trends involving the frequency of female orgasm. This study was conducted in Finland, and subjects were selected from the Central Population Register of Finland randomly. An important note, Finland is currently ranked #1 globally for gender equity, as well as Sweden, they're about equal. And it's also ranked #1 in Western Europe for comprehensive sexual education, which becomes important when discussing the results. The subjects of this study were both men and women, ages 18 to 81. However, for the purposes of these results, I'm going to be focusing on the female responses as this is about female orgasm. All right, so this study was conducted via 3 surveys. The first survey went out in 1999 to a total number of 1,496 participants. The second went out in 2007 to a total of 2,590 participants. And the third study went out in 2015 to a total of 2,150 participants. Unless referring to one of these specific surveys or to a specific year, when I talk about the results, it'll be the total number of participants, which was 6,236. So the surveys basically were large surveys with about 100 questions in them pertaining to personal sex life, as well as with an emphasis on orgasm. Every single survey sent out had the question, do you usually have an orgasm during sexual intercourse, to help find long-term trends in female orgasm frequency, as well as some other questions that I'll get to in a second. So for physical determinants, they wanted to figure out what would physically predict female orgasm. So they asked respondents whether they typically achieve orgasm through vaginal stimulation, clitoral stimulation, or simultaneous vaginal and clitoral stimulation. To analyze the mental determinants of what predicted orgasm frequency in women, they asked participants about communication with a sexual partner. And they figured this out by asking women to rank whether discussion with their sexual partner was difficult, or at least somewhat difficult, or was more or less not difficult. Then they looked into the sexual self-esteem of participants, and whether the participant considered herself sexually skilled. And they asked participants to rate themselves whether they completely disagree with the statement that they consider themselves sexually skilled, which would indicate a low range of sexual self-esteem, or if they completely agree with this statement, this would indicate high sexual self-esteem. So the results of this study are as follows. This graph shows a very clear negative correlation throughout the years of percent of young women who usually experience orgasm during intercourse. In 1999, about 53% of women typically experienced orgasm during sexual intercourse. In 2007, this dropped to about 47%. And in 2015, this dropped to 38%. And this was conducted with women under 35, so considered young women. P for these results was less than 0.001, indicating consistency in response. For the physical predictors of female orgasm during sexual interaction, and sexual interaction here was defined by oral sex, manual sex, and sexual intercourse, the results were as follows. About 34% of women typically achieved orgasm through just clitoral stimulation. About 54% of women typically achieved orgasm through simultaneous clitoral and vaginal stimulation, shown in the red, and only about 6% of women were able to typically achieve orgasm through just vaginal stimulation, shown in the blue. Additionally, only 6% of women never experienced orgasm during sexual intercourse, as shown in the green. P was also less than 0.001, indicating another consistency in results. female sexual self-esteem and communication with partner, these had a very, very strong correlation with frequency of orgasm as well. As shown by this graph, the light pink line here indicates that discussion with the participant's sexual partner was not difficult. The darker line below indicates that discussion was at least quite difficult with the sexual partner. And on the x-axis here is the sexual self-esteem spectrum that I described earlier. From you disagree completely with the statement that you are sexually skilled, to you agree completely with the statement that is sexually skilled. With the statement that you are sexually skilled. So both of these mental factors show a very clear correlation with high orgasm rates. P was also less than 0.001 for this. So for conclusions. The long-term female orgasm decline since the first survey in 1999 was very unexpected, especially given that comprehensive sex education, accessibility to healthcare, to sexual healthcare, and an overall sexual liberation and gender equality improvement in Finland has been growing over the years. However, these things are normally correlated with an improvement in orgasm frequency. However, in this study, this correlation was not indicated. Clitoral stimulation, along with vaginal stimulation or alone, was a clear determinant of orgasm frequency in women. And this is not that surprising, as the clitoris' only known function, as we've learned, is sexual pleasure. So it makes sense that this would have a high effect. However, reaffirming this focus on such an important sexual structure may be a key to closing this orgasm gap, this pleasure gap in men and women, and increasing female orgasm rates. The mental determinants of sexual self-esteem and sexual communication had a very strong correlation with orgasm frequency as well. However, even more unexpected was that sexual self-esteem in this study actually seemed to play an even greater role than sexual communication did. And sexual communication in the past has been thought by sexual advisors and sexual therapists to be the #1 cause for female orgasmic problems. However, sexual self-esteem seemed to play an even more important role, so maybe the focus needs to be shifted towards this type of confidence. In conclusion, some limitations for the study included the wording. So the wording was pretty limiting. There was no room to distinguish between vaginal, clitoral, or other types of orgasms women might be experiencing. So this kind of limited our comprehension. There was also no room for causal explanation. So we could see these correlations between maybe this determines this, but we weren't quite sure how the independent variable of determinants of orgasm would affect the dependent variable of frequency of female orgasm. In total, although the study had limitations, what the power of the study really came from focusing us on the type of questions we need to be asking about female orgasm in order to improve the female orgasm rates. The evolutionary origins of female orgasm are also slightly unknown right now, and they remain in question. So there are two main theories for the evolutionary origins of female orgasm. There is the byproduct theory, which suggests that the female orgasm came as a byproduct of the male orgasm. And then there's the adaptation theory that suggests it was maybe independently selected for adaptation. And this could be maybe for pair bonding or for something else like that. So, finding out the evolutionary origins of female orgasm may help us fill these important gaps in our understanding of female orgasm, not only improving female sex lives by allowing for a greater frequency of arguably the most pleasurable experience in existence. More women sort of deserve to have this experience, so finding the evolutionary origins may help us understand this a bit better. And in total, female orgasm determinants are very important or vital, not only for the expression of female sexuality, but also for our understanding of human sexuality as a whole. Thank you. Any questions?
How